You should still have your cross guard here detached from the main piece, because there are a few things that we're going to do before we glue that down. Okay, and you should also have the details on your guard finished. Okay. One thing that we're going to do is thin out the tang. The tang is what's going to form our grip. Right now it's a little bit thick, and if we were to just leave it like this, when we put a Space Marine hand around it, which is what this is going to be for, it's going to look very, very thick. It's not going to look good. His hand is going to be like this instead of, you know, gripped around it. So we're going to need to thin that out. However, if you have worked really hard to make your cross guard fit nice and tight, you don't want to be filing out an area that will then make it loose. So what you're going to do is simply attach your guard, take your pencil, zoom in here, and just get it into position and make a little mark with your pencil. Okay, now you know where not to file. Now to do this filing, you can either use your flat files like we've been using. You can also use a battery-powered little nail Dremel. This you can find at beauty supply shops, probably Amazon. My wife bought this for me because I kept stealing hers. So these come with a couple of different bits that you can use, and they're just battery operated like that. And these are useful for carefully taking off a little bit at a time. However, I would recommend, even if you have access to one of these, you're going to want to try the file work first, because you should really get that down as a skill set. Also, I would practice on a piece of throwaway plastic card before using this, because you can easily take too much if you're not used to how much material it takes out at a time. You might find that you're taking out too much. What I want to do is thin this out so much that not only will it look good with the hand wrapped around it, but we want to take it further than that, because I'm going to be wrapping this with fishing line. And if I leave this too fat and then add the fishing line, we're back to where we started, where the grip is not going to look, it's going to look too fat, right? So let's continue doing this. We're going to thin this out. Probably go a little bit more. If you don't have access to files and you don't have access to a little Dremel kit, you should fix that. You should definitely order some. They are extremely helpful. However, if all you have is a knife, you can still thin this out. You're just going to set it flat against something. I usually use the end of my table, but you won't be able to see that, so we'll just use the end of these tweezers, and you can scrape your blade 90 degrees along the flat until you're there. That takes off a good amount of material. You can also do that method as well. Alright, we are about where we need to be. I'm just going to even these out with a little bit of file work. However you decide to thin that out is your choice, but it should come out, you know, even and looking like that. Now we are ready to affix the guard. And we're going to slip this over it. Now, I actually cut this guard a little bit too wide in the little entry hole there. Closer for you guys. I cut it actually a little bit big because I want to show you a little trick for centering this thing in case you accidentally cut it too big and you're wondering how to get it nice and straight. Essentially, what you're going to do is get it to where you want it and then mark it with your pencil on either side, and now you have it centered. Okay, so in other words, if as long as you can make these lines flush with the ricasso, the blade part there, then you know where to hold it to glue it. Okay, and you also should be checking this way, check the sides, make sure everything is nice and even. And you can file it down afterward and add to it with green stuff if you mess this up. But it's always easier to just take your time and get it right the first time. So now we are actually ready to affix the guard. So what I would like to do is, because I don't want too much glue going everywhere, I'll usually get a throwaway blade like this one, which is chipped and covered in glue and everything. Get a little dab of that, and we can apply it to our area here. Okay, and on this particular blade, the skull is actually coming down over the guard. So once this is in place, I will actually be putting another skull to match on the other side. There we go. Check it that way. Check it that way. Pretty good. Now in this case, I will be adding that skull. So a little bit, oh, sorry, that's a clean new blade. That was close. Add a little bit of glue right there. And then I have a skull that I sculpted on the table last night that I let cure, and now I'm going to apply that. If I could flip it over. The way I'm going to do that is just poke him in the eye with my knife and then square him up and set him down. There we go. So now that you have the details of the hilt connected and all that, you can get a little bit more glue. Just, man, I keep grabbing that one. Grab your little glue knife here. And if you need to, you can gap fill. So you don't want too much glue hanging around. But if there are little areas that aren't quite filled, you can fix like that. Now let's wrap this grip in some fishing line. At this point, if you wanted to add more details to the hilt, you could by filing it down, shaping it, adding some finials, some little details on the ends here. That'll be up to you. For the purposes of the tutorial, let's assume that you're already done. We're going to grab some more glue. And it's a good idea to wipe old glue that's kind of still curing and drying in different stages of curing off of the blade so that it doesn't mix with your glue you're putting on now and messing it up, making it so it never cures properly. Okay, let's put a little bit of glue, say right there. Set your knife to the side, grab your fishing line, put it nice and flush so it isn't hanging off the other side. The reason we want to let this cure is because as we're wrapping it, it's much easier if this is already dried. Then it won't be flying off while we're trying to wrap. Once you have the end of the fishing line attached, now we can wrap the rest of the grip. What I would do is set this down, just like that. Get your glue blade. Spread some glue on either side. Now, you really need to make sure that this fishing line is dried, the first length of it, because as you're wrapping, it can come undone, and then that's no bueno. Also, don't use too long of a piece, because then you'll just be chasing the long tail around the entire time. You want to do nice little rows. Unless you want it to look haphazard and whatnot, and then you can do crisscross and all that. But this one, we're going to make it look nice and even. Okay, you can hold it like that. Slide all the coils down the grip. Slide all the coils down the grip. And just keep going. This may not come over very easily on camera. I hope you can see what I'm doing here. But at this point, this is a very stressful and very careful moment. And so doing it under the camera might be a little bit hard. Okay. I'm going to keep going. Yeah, see, it just unwound on me. Oop. Now, once you have everything in place, how you like it, if you have some glue cure, some fast magic glue activator, whatever this stuff is called, hit it with that, as that will definitely help. I am running out of this stuff. There we go. A little on this side. And we are wrapped up. Now the end here I'm not too worried about because I'm going to add a pommel. Okay, but the rest of it looks good. So I'm going to let this dry. Coil came off there. I'm going to let this dry and then come back to it. That looks pretty good. I am happy with that. I'm going to fix this last little coil and then let this cure, let this dry. Now once you have wrapped that, everything is dried, cured, it's how you like it, it's time to do the pommel. I'm going to make a pommel out of some 1/8 inch PVC plastic card tubing. So you can find this on Amazon. And what we're going to do is we are going to drill a little hole with our knife. So get a nice sharp knife and you're going to start a little hole here. Now once you get through, you're going to draw a box. Okay, you're going to draw like a I don't know if you can see that, but now you're going to draw a rectangle, the size and shape of the exposed tip of your tang right here, right? So, this focused. Once you have that carved out, nice and carefully, test fit it by seeing if your tang will enter the hole there. Alright, and if you need to trim this down, like you could file it, just get your file, and you could run this file to clean up any edges that you might need to, just to make it nice and snug. Because you don't want the hole that you're digging in that you're cutting into the pommel, you don't want it to be coming around too far on either side. You don't want it to go from like half to half. That might make it a little bit weak. So if you need to find a nice middle ground, go ahead and do that. And once you find a nice tight fit, move on to the next step. Now that you have a pommel that will hold, now we're going to slice off the PVC right there, and then we're going to do the rest with sanding. The reason that we cut the hole first was because if you get this all the way down to size and you try to cut the hole, it will bend and flatten on you and crumble and break. Okay, so for the same reason we do things in a certain order with the blade, same thing with the pommel. Okay, so I would actually take this this side down first because you have all this material to hold on to. So I would file that all the way down to where you want it, and then you'll get your saw and you're going to cut on that line nice and careful, and then sand the other side. Okay, so I'm going to file this side down first to where I want it, and then I will cut this one. Okay, I think I have this one side where I want it. I'm going to have to glue that wrap back down. But that is about as thick as I want it. So now I'm going to cut this other side and then sand it down. Alright, we got the saw. You're just going to use really light pressure and cut it one way. Come away like that. Get our file nice and flat. Okay. Because you guys can't see the end of my table. Like this. Could also glue it in place and then file it if you don't think that it will bend the tang and mess anything up. That's an alternative. But I don't have very much material to remove on this side, so we're just going to do it like this. Almost there. I'm going to attach this, and then I think I'll file the rest in place. Let's do that. Okay. Make sure everything is in place. Now at this point you can just file it down. Okay, so now I have filed the pommel to the diameter that I want. You can still see that there are some areas that have some gap filling necessary, like above the guard, and the pommel did crack. I'm going to add some grip rings, all in green stuff. But these will serve as good foundations for what I'm going to do. And those are the basics of building a sword. Now, of course, you could have, instead of building this out of tubing, you could have repurposed a piece from an existing miniature, or an existing bit, an existing weapon, whatever you would like to do. Now all that's left is to add details, and I will add pictures of those right before credits.